Welcome. This video is about the poem London by William Blake. I'm going to analyse it and show you what you should learn about the poem using these headings. This will allow you to compare different aspects of poetry so it makes sense to explore them in a memorable way. You can also use these ideas for an essay plan, and if you do cover them, you should have everything you need to get a top grade. If you want to create a mind map of this poem, you could use a template like this. Pause if you want to copy it and fill it in as you go. I will always use the same headings, so if you want, you can build up a bank of these mind maps for all the poems. Okay, first up is content and meaning. This is here to help secure the poem in your memory. You need to know what happens, what it's about, and what it means. So this is the one with the narrator describing what he sees during a walk around London. What he sees saddens him, as he sees people of all walks of normal life that seem to be imprisoned by different aspects of society that are controlling them, be that poverty, the ruling class, or religion. The poem comes from a collection of illustrated poems called Songs of Experience. Blake wrote this collection as a companion piece to his earlier work, Songs of Innocence. Where Songs of Innocence celebrates simplicity in nature, a kind of idealised world, Songs of Experience attacks the reality that stops the ideal from coming into being, the ways that innocence becomes corrupted, and in particular those organisations and people that keep people down, that squeeze the life and energy out of common people so that newborn infants are born into poverty and can never escape. The poem is a dramatic monologue, so it's written in the first person. The voice speaking is passionate and full of rage at the inequality and suffering he sees. I'm assuming that you've read the poem, so let's jump straight into analysing it. Beginning and ending. The idea behind this section is to consider some structural points and to make sure you can always compare them meaningfully. In this poem, the beginning establishes that the world has already been carved up. He says, "I wander through its chartered streets, near where the chartered Thames does flow." Chartered has a double meaning. It means mapped out and measured, but it also means that it has been owned, taken by charter, and ruled by charter. Charters are rules, and this contrasts with the nature of the free-flowing Thames and the freedom that the speaker claims as his as he is able to wander. He won't be constrained, even if the land is. The ending of the poem sums up the effect of this greed and this need to stake a claim to every piece of land so that it's no longer belonging to a shared community. At the time of writing, the government were enclosing spaces and removing common land from shared ownership. The effect of this, and the other inequalities and cruelties that Blake exposes, lead to the final image, where the oppression blights with plagues the marriage hearse. As is often the case with Blake, there are opposites twisting around this image. Oxymorons are apparently contradictory terms joined together, so this could be an example. Hearses are the transportation for coffins, and we use them in funerals, whereas marriage is the joining of two people. These contradictory terms are woven because Blake wants to leave the reader with a sense of doom about the future and the future generations unless something changes. Instead of the happy celebration that a wedding should be, we have a commemoration of what could have been. Blights with plague suggests a biblical punishment, a moral corruptness that will not go unnoticed and unpunished. This last stanza has generated a lot of words in Blakean circles, and there are people who love to explore his work in minute detail because the plague is linked to the harlot's curse. A harlot is a prostitute, which makes the plague and the curse a venereal disease, an STD or STI in modern parlance. But look at the description and you'll see that she is described as youthful. This is a child or a very young adult who has no other way of surviving. And so she's a victim of the same cruelty and greed in society. Blake is saying that humanity is weakened by disease because they are mistreated, because they have to struggle to survive. Form and structure. When we talk about form in poetry, we mean those specifically poetic aspects. When we are trying to write an essay that includes form, we need to find a reason for the form that reflects the tone, meaning, or the focus of the question. Form is about the aspects of writing that are specific to the way poetry works, like type of poem, rhyme and rhythm. Structure in poetry is the way the poet organises the elements of the poem, the order, as well as overlapping with form when considering stanza structure and rhyme. We've already discussed the beginning and end of the poem, so we've already established some structural elements. What I do in this section is explore some relevant aspects of form and structure to give you something that you can write about in an exam that will be tied to analysis. Let's deal with the basics first. The poem is written in regular quatrains, meaning it's got 4 lines in each stanza. It gives it a measured stanza structure and rhyme scheme, which contrasts with the uncontrolled misery that he sees. The poet uses a simple A-B-A-B rhyme scheme. I've seen it said that this reflects both his footsteps as he walks around London and the unrelenting and unchanging misery of the city. I think I would add that the ABAB rhyming scheme is what makes it a song. It's what makes it song-like, along with the tetrameter that has 4 accented syllables in each line. If you want to work out a way to build that into an argument, there is a straightforward simplicity to the rhythm of Blake's poetry, which often belie a dastardly complexity in ideas, but the truth comes from this simple voice, which understands the experience but speaks with the cadence of innocence. For the less obvious bits, and once you see it, it becomes so obvious that you think, why did I not see this before? Let's look around the halfway point of the poem, the end of the second stanza. The final line of the stanza reads, "The mind-forged manacles I hear." The stanza ends with a colon pointing to the next stanza. As we read it aloud, you won't notice this, but looking at the poem in capitals, at the start of each line, it spells out here, H-E-A-R. Blake has included an acrostic in the stanza, so again, we need to think of ideas that we can use to explain this, to build an argument about how we should interpret the poem. As always, do think for yourself and do explore more than one meaning, you'll get a higher mark. Here are a few ideas to kick it off. The ending of stanza 2 is the voice in the poem saying, "I hear." The acrostic is an imperative telling the reader to listen to their senses and hear the cries as well as Blake does. The senses for Blake bypass society as given to us by the ruling classes. He wants us to see and hear for ourselves, not listen to the messages from the church or the law. London is primarily about what Blake sees and hears in London. He believes that the church and the government have stopped listening to people, hence repetition of hear. We are being asked to listen to the innocent, the child chimney sweeper, and the hapless soldier, the ordinary people that make up society, not those in control of society. I'm going to pick out 3 images to concentrate on, and they all encapsulate Blake's ideas about the effect of power in society on the average person. Firstly, let's think about the marks from stanza 1. He says, "Mark in every face I meet, marks of weakness, marks of woe." The first mark is a verb meaning notice or see. Usually this word is used to convey something important, like we marked the occasion. The next marks are the effects of what he sees in their faces, which shows the people's unhappiness and misery and their inability to do anything about it. The marks are from abstract qualities, weakness and woe, meaning misery, but they're becoming something real, something physical, like scars, and they're now visible to the speaker. The technical term for this type of metaphor is reification, where the metaphor of something abstract becomes something real. Blake is presenting the misery of being controlled as a big thing, as something pervasive in society, as something that he can see in people's faces. Blake uses repetition for emphasis, and every face in stanza 1 comes back in stanza 2. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every ban, the mind-forged manacles I hear. That's 6 uses of every, 7 if we include the one in the third stanza. So I think it's fair to say that Blake wanted to emphasize the pervasive nature of this misery. It is everywhere. The imagery is shifted from the visual, I see, to the auditory of the cries that he hears. The technique being used here is anaphora, the repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of successive clauses or sentences, and it's used to show the scope of the suffering. Both adults and children are included. Look at how the innocent are now afraid, implying some kind of terror. The cries could be in response to terror or fear or suffering. The word ban implies that things are forbidden by law, recalling the charted streets of stanza 1, but it's also associated with the church, and the word ban with 2 N's is still used as a proclamation by the church. Thirdly, finally, the mind-forged manacles is an interesting metaphor which almost acknowledges it's a metaphor. The inclusion of the words mind-forged tells you that the manacles, those early handcuffs, are man-made, made of thought and not metal, and represent the people trapped in poverty, trapped in the army, or trapped by an unforgiving church. Forged implies energy, strategy, and effort that's been made to imprison these people. They're not there by accident, but by cruel design. It also implies that the way to break free is through thought, through the senses, hence the acrostic here, and the realization that society doesn't have to be built the way it is for Blake. And this is the reason why he's truly the first of the Romantic poets. The senses show the way forward. He wanted us to realize that our senses can fuel our imagination, that we can imagine a new way to create the world, just as he imagines a new way to craft his poems into books. The idea behind this section is to give you an easily identifiable point that you can use to explore the presentation of feelings and use it as a starting point to compare feelings in other poems. The acrostic here, we've just mentioned, means more than hear. There's an element of synesthesia in the poem. Hearing and seeing become one thing. Synesthesia means one sense, such as hearing, is being experienced through another sense, such as sight. In the poem, Blake sees the hapless soldier's sigh, and it runs in blood down palace walls. The sigh has connotations of regret and sorrow. There's a weariness in the wordless emotional expression of a sigh, doubled down by the sibilance of soldier's sigh that tells us the soldier is used and abused, sent into danger for someone else's gain. That sibilance of soldier's sigh is soft, reflects the dying breath of the soldier, and that softness is juxtaposed with the harshness of his blood that is spilt defending the palace or those in power. It's his blood that is spilled, and yet the palace walls only protect the powerful and wealthy. The sigh and the feeling it's loaded with manifests as a physical, visible, observable thing, blood, and yet Blake is concerned not all can see or hear it yet. Blake deals in opposites and contrasts the powerful with the vulnerable. Blake didn't agree with the church and felt they'd lost their way, becoming a mechanism for the powerful against the people. Just as Karl Marx famously declared, religion is the opium of the people, for Blake, the church offers salvation too late, after death, and sits by when people are suffering in the mortal plane. He contrasts the chimney sweep then, who would have been a child, with the blackening church. The blackening comes from the soot, the industrialization, the factories imprisoning people. So darkening of the building symbolizes a growing ignorance and evil. Appalls is an interesting word, and we get the sense that Blake finds it appalling. He's horrified at the oppression of both the factories and the church, but the word can also mean it turns pale. In symbolic terms, the church should be white and pure, but it has become filthy and grubby. The contrasts and juxtapositions throughout the poem show the difference between expectation and reality. The church should help, but it exploits and reinforces inequality. I hope you found that useful. There will be more poems coming, so I hope you'll be back soon.